But I want to thank all of the great people of Washington, D.C., all of the people that we worked with to put this miracle together. So, have a good life. We will see you soon. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Those were the last words in the speech of outgoing President Donald Trump before boarding a plane to Mar-a-Lago. President-elect Joe Biden was sworn in just a few hours later. Welcome to our In Focus discussion tonight. The inauguration ceremony of today brings the end to the term of President Donald Trump and the start of the Biden administration. It was a day that the team that produces this newscast has been thinking about for a while. How do we talk about a momentous day like today in a different way? We also have been thinking about Salt Lake Tribune editorial cartoonist Pat Bagley for a while. He has been at the Tribune for more than 4 decades, making him right now the longest continually serving political cartoonist at any paper. He was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize in 2014, and this year he was named Political Cartoonist of the Year by the National Cartoonists Society. And obviously, he has some thoughts on politics. So on this day, we decided to have a long discussion with him about the inauguration, his work, and his own story. We are very happy to have Pat Bagley join us by Zoom tonight. Pat, thank you so much for carving out time to be on the show. It's good to see you.
Well, it's good to be here. Thanks, Rosie.
Pat, what did you think about today? What did you make of President Biden and President Trump's remarks?
Oh, so it's felt like I've been holding my breath for 4 years, and at 12 o'clock today, no, 10 o'clock here in Utah, I felt like I could finally breathe. Biden was sworn in as president. The chances of a coup happening didn't happen. We've got a president who is going to appoint professionals to take care of the issues that we're facing. We're facing enormous issues. This is huge.
Now, luckily, today went off without a hitch and everybody was safe who was there. The inauguration has been on the calendar for a while. We all know it's going to be January 20th. How have you been thinking about it as an editorial cartoonist?
Well, I think we're on a nice edge until it actually happened, until Biden actually took the oath of office, and then there was no going back. We're going to go forward. And it affected me more than I thought it would. I find myself tearing up. I find myself being very emotional. I love this country. I love its institutions. It affected me deeply.
So as an editorial cartoonist, you do have an editorial side. Softball question. What is your view on the legacy of President Trump?
Well, short term, we've got a lot of spin that's going to happen. But long term, he's going to be judged the worst president in American history. He came in and he just kind of undercut all of our institutions, cast aspersions on everybody. I mean, he had bad things to say about the Pope, Mother Teresa, everybody except for Vladimir Putin, which I find kind of interesting, kind of curious.
Now, part of being an editorial cartoonist is finding a visual element in a political figure, certain things which you could exaggerate. You portrayed Trump as a small man with a really long tie. Talk about these decisions that you made. What did you start with and what changed over time?
So with the beginning of a presidential administration, you kind of look for the little quirks that will define a person. And I noticed that Trump's, he tied his tie so that it was really long. And so as a cartoonist, you exaggerate that. And so I started to elongate the tie so that it dragged behind him, and it became one of the features of his presidency. The other thing is the small hands, and that was because he went on a national debate, and I don't know how to even phrase this, but he said that the size of your hands are reflective of another part of your anatomy, and so cartoonists are going, well, okay, small hands.
And leave it up to the people who heard that to interpret it whatever way they want to.
That's right. And by the way, the whole long tie thing is most cartoonists have adopted that. And I think if you went back, you would see that I was probably one of the first adopters, if not the first. That's somebody for a researcher. Some researchers should look at that.
Let's talk about one cartoon in particular of President Trump in a king has no clothes situation. What inspired you to create this image?
It was the absolute devotion that Trumpers have to Donald J. Trump. And it is frightening. It's unthinking. It's it's like Kim Jong-un. It's exactly the same thing. He can do no wrong. Trump himself said, if I went and shot somebody on Fifth Avenue, I wouldn't lose any supporters. And he's right, apparently.
It really speaks volumes of certain followers that he has and what he knows about those followers. Pat, hold that thought. We do have to take a quick commercial break, but when we return, we'll continue our conversation with Salt Lake Tribune editorial cartoonist Pat Bagley.
The Tribune is going to experience the full and total anger of the silent majority. We're not standing down anymore. We're not just watching things and hoping that it gets better. The silent majority has awakened, and we're not going anywhere.
That was James Sullivan, co-founder of the group Civilized Awakening, protesting against the Salt Lake Tribune and Pat Bagley for an editorial cartoon that Pat drew. Thanks for staying with us for our second In Focus discussion tonight with Salt Lake Tribune editorial cartoonist Pat Bagley. Let's get right back into the conversation. Pat, we'd like to talk about your white supremacy and law enforcement comic. It was one of your most controversial comics that at least I can remember. It's one that you've been working for a while, if that's correct, before it was published. Were you surprised about the backlash that it received?
Well, first of all, the thing that spurred the cartoon was I'd been reading about law enforcement being infiltrated by white supremacist organizations. And it was their stated goal to infiltrate police organizations. And I was thinking about this, and also I saw the videos of police officers flashing white power signs at right-wing demonstrators. And if we look at what happened in the Capitol 2 weeks ago, the police put their lives on the line. But there were some instances of police welcoming these white racists into the Capitol. So the goal of white supremacists is to infiltrate police. And I was trying to think, how do I do this? And I realized I was walking into a minefield when I did the cartoon because it is such a delicate issue. And police, they can't win, right? I mean, what they do is important and it's a tough job. It's really hard. So I tried to come up with a cartoon idea that would suggest that it's not them, it is something that has infiltrated them. And so I did this cartoon which suggested that white supremacists had infiltrated policing. And I thought about it a lot. And I was kind of surprised by the response that I got. And I think it was the Sheriff's Association and the Utah Police Union came out with statements saying that I said that all police are racists. And if you look at the cartoon does not say that. The cartoon says that they have been infected by this outside influence. And that's what I was trying to get across.
Now, you have a follow-up cartoon. I'm wondering if our producer and director can bring up this follow-up cartoon that we can talk about. It's of the side mirror of a car, and it shows looks like a female police officer in it, and the caption says, "Object in mirror puts his or her life on the line for you every day." Let's talk about this one.
Okay, this is Josie Fox, who was murdered by somebody that she pulled over, I think it's out by Delta. And I appreciate police, and sure, I do cartoons that occasionally ding police, but I've also done cartoons that I show how I appreciate what they do because they put their lives on the line for us. Policing, like I say, they just can't win these days. That attack on the Capitol, you had people using American flags to beat police. That's just absolutely nuts, right? Crazy. And there was Bruce Champagne from the Utah Peace Officers Association who reached out to me, and he said, we feel angry about what you did. You're trying to portray policing as having this racist bent, but we want you to say what you meant. And so I wrote the statement saying, what I just told you, was not meant to say that all police are racist. It says that policing has a white supremacist problem. It's got an issue. And so he let me write this statement. And one of the things I said was, one of the things I'm worried about is these right-wing groups are infiltrating police. That's all that I meant by the whole cartoon.
And that's what's tough about being an artist, right? Art is typically up to the viewer for interpretation, and everyone will interpret it differently depending on their own values, beliefs, backgrounds, and whatnot. I do want to get to this next question since
Okay.
we're running short on time in this segment. We want to know about Mitt Romney. I feel like over the past few years, many people's views have changed on Mitt Romney. I want to know, has your editorial view evolved about our Senator Mitt Romney?
Well, obviously we don't agree politically, but the thing I know about Mitt Romney is he doesn't lie. He doesn't tell things that he doesn't believe. And for that, I celebrate him.
Now, your main foil throughout your career has been the Utah legislature. All of your elected officials have that same look. In 2020, you put them in Trump hair and makeup. Talk about how your work has changed with the legislature.
So early on in my early career, when I drew a legislator, I would have to write the legislature on it. And that's a long word to put on a person. And I eventually developed this character with, the fish lips and kind of pudgy, that well-fed Nordic look. And it fits, right? And so I don't have to write the legislature on it, because if you see that character, you know exactly who I'm talking about.
I mean, your cartoons really speak to many problems that we've actually talked to about the show. That first cartoon that we showed reminds me of a conversation we had about how the legislature doesn't really make up the people of youth, like as far as gender, race, right? Socioeconomic background. And so I think what I like about your art is it is stirring up those difficult conversations about the difficult topics that we need to have, not just in the state, but in the country. So Pat, go ahead.
What I want the cartoons to do more than anything is I want people to get engaged. I want them to know what's going on, because everybody's affected by politics. George Orwell said, you think you're not affected by politics? You are, absolutely are. You have to get engaged. You have to know what's going on.
Very true. Pat, hold that thought. We have to take a quick commercial break, but when we return, we'll resume our conversation with Salt Lake Tribune editorial cartoonist Pat Bagley. Welcome to our third and final In Focus discussion tonight with Salt Lake Tribune editorial cartoonist Pat Bagley. Pat, we have a lot to cover in this block, so let's get right to it. There are more people who want to know more about you, so in this segment, we'd like to get to know the person behind the art. Now, you grew up LDS in Oceanside. What was that like?
It's different than growing up LDS in Utah. I realized that when I came back to visit cousins in Utah. And if you're out in the field, it's, like I say, it's just different.
Now, history played a big part in your life. You earned a degree in history from BYU. Your brother is acclaimed Utah historian Will Bagley. Where did you and your family find your love of history?
The problem with my father, and every time in the household, Dad would be reading a book, he'd be reading a newspaper, he'd be watching the news. History was important. I mean, I'm a fifth generation Utahn, and I feel my roots, and I love the state, and I love the history. And a lot of it is not really good, but it's our history. And if you know history, it can arm you for what is going to happen next.
Let's talk about your father, who was the mayor of Oceanside for 3 terms. What did he impress on you about how a politician should or shouldn't act?
This is the thing that he taught me, is that, first of all, no politics is as dirty as local politics. But politics is all about picking up the garbage. It's all about keeping the streets maintained. It's all about serving the people.
Could you tell us about your time at BYU and the mission that you served?
Oh, so I did the whole 9 yards. I went on a mission to Bolivia. I graduated from BYU, and BYU is actually a pretty great educational experience.
Now, a lot of your cartoons are in response to the news of the day. And us here at ABC4, we always know it's tough. We try to find a new in-focus topic every single night. For you, how hard is it to find humor on a daily basis on one day's headline?
Oh, it's like trying to drink from a fire hose. There's just too much these days. I'm old enough to remember when you had to really search for a topic to do. But with the way the country's going, with Trump and all of the craziness, there's no end of topics that I can choose from.
Now, other cartoons of yours are deeper. Some are nuances or root causes like money funding politics or your series of anti-fascists. How would you describe those? Are they easier to draw?
There are certain themes that keep coming back. And if you look at my cartoons, like, for example, the Utah legislature, which is back in session, and I've been around long enough that I can boil it down to what they actually do. They do what their rich donor buddies want them to do. And so I'm able to do cartoons about what's really going on behind the scenes.
You are the longest employed political cartoonist at any newspaper nationwide. What does that mean to you?
I feel incredibly grateful. I feel connected to the community. I don't know, luck. I'm just lucky.
Let's go to the objective of your cartoons. I know every single day you put a lot of thought in your cartoons, and I'm sure you think about the kind of response that it's going to have in your viewers' minds. When it comes to your cartoons changing minds, what's your thought process there? Are you hoping that your cartoons can spark this change?
Well, the cartoons are supposed to educate, illustrate, and persuade, and the last thing that they do is entertain. You know, if they're funny, that's good. But if I can persuade somebody, that's what the cartoon is all about. That's my whole point.
Now let's get to one of your other cartoons that we'd like to bring up in particular. It's the Malala cartoon. You said it is probably your most shared comic. Let's see if our producers and our directors can bring up that Malala one. Let's read it. It says, "What terrifies religious extremists like the Taliban are not American tanks or bombs or bullets. It's a girl with a book." So tell us when this comic was released and what your thought process was behind this one.
So when you cartoon, and sometimes I think this cartoon is going to get tremendous response, and I'll put it out there and nothing happens. And then you do a cartoon and you think, who knows, you know, throw it out there. But this is the cartoon I did, and it got huge response. It got circulated worldwide, and people started sending it back to me. It was translated into Italian, into Swedish, into Pashto, into Arabic. This is probably the biggest cartoon I ever did. And all I got to say is that the sentiment behind it was true, and it was universal, and it resonated with people. Knowledge is power.
Pat, we have about 1 minute left in our segment. I want to open it up to you. I've been firing all these questions at you, but you know, for some people, this is the first time they've gotten to hear from you on a personal level and put, you know, a face to the name. So I'd like to open it up to you. What do you want our viewers to know about you, about your work, about your passion, especially because they get a chance to see you tonight?
Okay, so I've been accused of being a communist, a socialist, a Marxist, all these things that people throw at me. And if you want to know if I'm a socialist, just ask a socialist if I'm a socialist, and they'll laugh in your face. I'm actually an Eisenhower Republican. I believe in infrastructure, I believe in education, I believe in a social safety net. The problem that we're having today in America is that the Republican Party has drifted so far right that it is incredibly radical and out of tune with what America really needs. Like I say, I'm an Eisenhower Republican. That's all that I am. I'm not a crazy bomb-throwing liberal. Well, I'm a liberal, but I'm not a Marxist. I'm not a socialist. That's just nonsense. So I want people to know that.
Well, there you have it. For everybody who've been calling your names or assuming what your political leanings are, now we know. Pat Bagley self-announced as a Eisenhower Republican. Pat, it was so great to have you on the show tonight. You've been hearing from Salt Lake Tribune editorial cartoonist Pat Bagley. It was great to pick your brain tonight. Thank you for carving out time to be with us. It was great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Rosie.